6 months later, the Death Edge had become the most requested assignment in the entire Deathworld Alliance fleet. Word had spread throughout military circles about the ship with the Guardian, and every warrior species wanted to serve alongside. Earth Gift Buddy had adapted to his celebrity status with typical hamster pragmatism. His habitat had been expanded into a full ecosystem module complete, with tunnels, climbing structures, and a variety of earth plants that made him feel at home. The module took up an entire section of the ship. He had also acquired a support staff of dedicated alien caretakers who treated their duties with religious devotion. Each species contributed their unique skills to his care. The Nexari used their crystal resonance to monitor his health, while the Zephyrite provided security commander. Vex reviewed mission reports in his ready room, accompanied by Park and the ship's senior officers. The numbers told an impressive story that exceeded everyone. Wildest expectations about the impact one small creature could have. Pirate attacks down 90% in our patrol sector. He read from his datapad, diplomatic missions achieving unprecedented success rates, first contact protocols running smoother than anyone thought possible. These results are remarkable, Dr. Yex commented from her position near the science station, her crystalline form shifting to colors that indicated scientific fascination. The creature's presence has fundamentally altered how other species perceive us. Pirates flee at the mention of our ship's name. Park nodded from her position near the viewport, watching stars streak past as they traveled to their next assignment. Buddy has become something of a legend. The screaming Guardian of the Alliance has quite a reputation across the galaxy. The reputation is well earned, Commander Vex rumbled approvingly. Yesterday's encounter with the Marauder Squadron ended before it began. They took one sensor reading of our ship's biosignature and immediately requested peaceful passage. The ship's intercom activated with a priority message from the bridge commander. We are receiving a transmission from Earth. Ambassador June wishes to speak with you privately, the tone suggested. This was not routine communication, Commander. Vex exchanged glances with his officers. Communications from Earth had become increasingly important since Buddy's arrival, and every message carried the potential for significant developments. The main screen activated to show Ambassador June sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable office overlooking a green landscape filled with trees and flowing water. The peaceful setting contrasted sharply with the military environment of the starship. Commander Vex, she began with a warm smile. I hope Buddy is settling in well with his new family. The question seemed casual but carried deeper meaning about the success of their partnership. Ambassador, he has exceeded every expectation. His presence has transformed our operational effectiveness in ways we are still discovering. Every day brought new examples of how the small hamster had changed their lives. Ambassador June's expression became more serious. I'm glad to hear that, because Earth has been monitoring the galactic response to our little friend. The results have been very interesting indeed. She activated a holographic display showing star charts with various territorial markings. Pirate activity has decreased by 60%. In sectors where Alliance ships operate, trade route security has improved dramatically. The creature has become a symbol, Commander Vex observed, but he suspected there was more to this communication than simple status updates. More than a symbol, Ambassador June corrected. He has become proof that Earth partnership with the Alliance is genuine and beneficial. Which brings me to the reason for this communication. She paused, and her smile returned with a slightly mischievous quality that made Park suddenly nervous about what was coming next. Earth government has approved the next phase of our cultural exchange program. We are prepared to share additional Earth creatures with trusted Alliance vessels, provided they meet certain criteria. For care and responsibility. The bridge fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. If Buddy represented a typical Earth companion animal, the prospect of additional creatures suggested possibilities that both excited and terrified everyone present. What type of creatures? Commander Vex asked carefully, not sure he wanted to know the answer, but needing to prepare his crew for whatever was coming. We were thinking of starting with a cat. Ambassador June replied innocently. They are excellent for ship security, very good at controlling pest populations, and they have interesting psychological effects on crew morale. Park made a small choking sound that might be suppressed laughter. Ambassador, maybe we should discuss the cat's other characteristics before making any commitments. The warning carried implications that worried the alien officer's nonsense. Ambassador June interrupted cheerfully. I am sure our Alliance friends can handle a simple Earth feline after all. They have done so well with Buddy. Her confidence seemed genuine, but Park's expression suggested otherwise as the communication ended. Commander next turned to Park with an expression of growing concern. Liaison Park, what exactly should we expect? From an Earth cat, the question carried the weight of someone who had learned to be very careful. Park considered her words carefully. Well, they are very independent, and they have excellent hunting instincts, and they are extremely territorial, and they can see in complete darkness, and they move absolutely silently. The list of abilities caused the alien officers to exchange increasingly worried glances. Each new trait sounded more threatening than the last, especially coming from a world that had already surprised them so completely. Park added as an afterthought. And they purr when they are happy, but they also make other sounds when they are hunting or defending territory. The hunting sounds are particularly effective at psychological warfare. Commander Thex looked at Buddy, who was peacefully sleeping in his nest, then back at Park. Perhaps we should request additional training before accepting this new crew member. The suggestion carried the wisdom of experience. Probably a good idea. Park agreed. Earth cats are wonderful companions, but they definitely have their own approach to shipboard life and crew interactions. The understatement made everyone even more nervous as the Death Edge continued its patrol through Alliance Space. Buddy slept contentedly in his expanded habitat, unaware that he had started a revolution in interspecies relations. His simple presence had proven that Earth gifts came with responsibilities and surprises. The Deathworld Alliance had gained more than just a new member. They had discovered that true partnership sometimes came in very small, very loud packages that refused to be ignored or underestimated. Somewhere in the depths of space, pirate captains shared warnings about the ships that carried Earth creatures. The screaming had stopped, but the message continued to echo across the stars. Earth Children Part 1, The Gift that changed everything. Captain Lee walked into the big meeting room of the Deathworld Alliance with a small box in his hands. The room was huge and filled with the scariest fighters in the whole galaxy. The walls were made of black metal and covered with weapons from 100 different worlds. The lights were bright and cold, making everything look dangerous. The Vorthic warriors stood like mountains in the room. Their skin looked like dragon scales and their eyes glowed red in the dark. They were so tall that Lee had to look way up to see their faces. Each one could probably crush a small car with their bare hands. Their claws made clicking sounds on the metal floor. When they moved, next to them stood the Nexari, people who looked like they were made of living crystal. Their bodies caught the light and threw rainbows everywhere, but Lee knew those pretty colors hid deadly weapons inside. Each crystal point on their bodies could cut through steel like butter. They moved like dancers, but fought like demons. The Zephyrite soldiers filled another corner of the room with their bug-like bodies. Their big compound eyes watched everything at once, and their sharp mandibles clicked together, making sounds like knives being sharpened. They had 4 arms each, and could move faster than most people could. Think all these terrible fighters were staring at Lee in his small box with confusion written all over their alien faces. They had expected the famous human warriors to bring weapons or battle plans or maybe some scary Earth technology. Instead, Lee carried something that looked like it might hold jewelry. Commander Thex stepped forward from the Vorthak group. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together in an earthquake, and his breath smelled like sulfur from volcanic worlds. He was the biggest warrior in the room, and his reputation for winning battles was known across 50 star systems. What is this tiny offering human? He growled while looking down at Lee like he might step on him. The other aliens made agreeing sounds that ranged from crystalline chimes to insect buzzing. All of them seemed disappointed that the humans had not brought something more impressive. Lee smiled big and bright like he was talking to friendly neighbors instead of the most dangerous killers in space. He set his box down on the central table and opened it carefully. Inside was a small furry creature with round black eyes and tiny pink paws. The creature looked up at all the scary aliens without any fear at all. Meet Buddy, said Lee proudly. He is what we humans call a hamster. Consider him a friendship gift to make our new partnership stronger. The little animal started grooming his whiskers with his small paws, completely ignoring the fact that he was surrounded by The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a loud hiss that echoed through the enormous room. Taemin walked inside and felt very small. The ceiling was so high he could not see the top, and the walls were covered with strange alien symbols that glowed in colors he had never seen before. Hundreds of different alien species sat in floating chairs that moved around the room like angry insects. Each species looked completely different from the others. Some had tentacles instead of arms, some had eyes all over their heads, some were made of what looked like living metal or crystal. Taemin was the only human in the entire building. He wore his best diplomatic uniform, but it felt cheap and simple compared to the amazing technology around him. The aliens had machines that could read his thoughts and devices that could change the air he breathed. They had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, while humans had only left Earth a few decades ago. The council leader was a creature that looked like a walking mountain covered in sharp crystal spikes. Each spike was taller than Taemin, and they changed colors based on the creature's mood. Right now, they were glowing angry. Raid Ambassador Taemin had been working as a human diplomat for 5 years. He had helped solve trade disputes and border problems between human colonies and alien worlds. He thought he was good at his job. He thought the aliens respected him. He was wrong. The crystal creature spoke in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together, but the translation device in Taemin's ear made the words clear. "We have decided on your next assignment." Taemin bowed politely as he had been taught in diplomatic training. "I am honored to serve." At council, what world needs human assistance? The other aliens started making sounds that the translator told him were laughter, but it did not sound friendly at all. It sounded like the noise predators make before they attack Death World Keth 7. The council leader announced, and a huge holographic display appeared in the center of the room. Taemin stared at the image and felt his stomach drop. The planet looked like something from a nightmare. The continents were covered in purple and black vegetation that moved even though there was no wind. Massive storms raged across the surface, and the clouds were not white or gray, but sickly green and yellow. Your species claims to be adaptable. The council leader continued. The spikes on its body were now flashing between red and orange, which meant it was enjoying itself. "This planet will test that," claimed Taemin. Studied the data that appeared next to the hologram. The gravity was 3 times stronger than Earth, which meant every step would feel like carrying 2 other people on his back. The atmosphere contained acids that would burn through most materials. The temperature changed from freezing cold to burning hot every few hours. The plant life was aggressive and carnivorous. The animal life was worse. 12 different alien species have attempted to colonize this world, said another council member. This one looked like a giant shark with arms and legs and too many teeth. All 12 attempts ended in complete failure. Every single colonist died within the first month. Taemin kept his face calm, even though his heart was beating very fast. "This is clearly a punishment assignment. What did humanity do to deserve this?" The crystal creature's spikes flared brighter. "Your species grows too fast. You spread across the galaxy like a disease, taking resources that belong to older, more established civilizations. You need to learn your place." The shark alien showed all of its teeth in what might have been a smile. "Your people are young and stupid and weak. This planet will teach you humility. When you fail, your species will accept population controls. We will decide how many humans can live." Where other delegates around the room nodded and made agreeing sounds. A creature that looked like a tree with eyes said, "Humans think they are special because they survived on one small planet. Now they will learn what real survival means." Taemin listened to them talk about his species like they were discussing an annoying pest that needed to be controlled. He thought about his grandfather who had fought in the water wars on Earth when half the planet was desert. He thought about his mother who had worked in the asteroid mines, where one small mistake meant floating dead in space forever. He thought about his sister who was right now helping to build the first human city on a planet where the air was poison and the ground was made of razor-sharp crystals. The aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. One human. The council leader said, 6 months. If you survive and establish a successful colony, your species will receive full membership in the Galactic Council with unrestricted expansion rights." The shark alien laughed, "And when you fail, humanity will accept our guidance in all matters of expansion and population. Your species will stay in the systems we assign to you." Taemin did some quick math in his head. The odds were clearly designed to be impossible. No alien species had ever survived on Keth 7. And most of those species were stronger and more advanced than humans. The planet seemed specifically designed to kill anything that tried to live there, but humans had survived the ice ages on Earth. Without technology, they had lived in deserts and jungles and Arctic wastelands. They had survived wars and plagues and disasters that would have destroyed other species. Humans were not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they were the most stubborn. Except Temin said quietly. The room erupted in more alien laughter. Some of the delegates were already making what sounded like bets on how quickly he would die. The crystal creature's spikes were now bright yellow, which meant it was very pleased with itself. But when I succeed, Temin continued, and his voice was louder. Now, humanity gets everything you promised: full membership rights, unrestricted expansion, and I want it in writing. The council leader waved one massive crystal arm. Agreed. You will have 6 months to establish a permanent settlement with sustainable food, water, and shelter. If you succeed, your demands will be met. If you fail, your species will submit to our authority. Fine, Temin said, but I have one more condition. The aliens stopped laughing. The crystal creature's spikes turned purple, which meant confusion. What condition? Human. When I succeed, and I will succeed, I want humanity to have the right to help other species colonize worlds they think are impossible. I want us to be the ones who turn death worlds into garden worlds. The council leader made a sound like grinding stone. You are already planning your funeral, human. Very well. If by some miracle you survive, Keth 7 humanity will be granted planetary development. Right. Stamen smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Thank you. I will need transportation to the planet and basic survival equipment. Nothing fancy, just the same gear you would give to any other species. The shark alien was still showing its teeth. Transport will be provided. You leave tomorrow. As Temin walked out of the council chamber, he heard the aliens behind him talking about where to hold the celebration when news of his death arrived. They were discussing which human colonies to claim first and how to divide up the resources. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The alien transport ship dropped Temin on the surface of Keth 7. Like they were throwing out garbage. The ship did not even land properly. It just hovered a few meters above the ground and opened its cargo. Temin fell out with his basic survival gear scattered around him. The ship flew away before he could even stand up. The first thing that hit him was the smell. The air smelled like rotten eggs mixed with burning metal, and something sweet that made him want to throw up. His environmental suit immediately started beeping warnings about toxic gases and acid particles in the atmosphere. The second thing was the gravity. Every step felt like he was carrying 2 other people on his back. His bones ached and his muscles screamed just from trying to walk. His basic training on high-gravity worlds had not prepared him for this. The third thing was the sound. The planet was loud. Creatures howled in the distance. Plants made clicking and hissing noises. The ground itself seemed to bubble and whisper. The wind carried sounds that his translator could not identify, but that made his skin crawl. Temin looked around at his new home and tried not to panic. The landscape looked like a painting made by someone who hated life. Purple trees with black bark reached toward a sky that was the color of old blood. The trees had no leaves. Instead, they had long tentacle-like branches that moved, constantly searching for something to grab. Red grass covered the ground, but it was not really grass. Each blade was sharp enough to cut through his boots if he was not careful. In the distance, he could see mountains that glowed with their own light. Steam rose from cracks in the ground, and the air shimmered with heat even though his suit told him the temperature was below freezing. The planet could not decide if it wanted to freeze him or burn him, so it was trying to do both. His first priority was shelter. The alien council had given him a basic emergency kit that included a small tent, some water, recycling equipment, and food for 1 week. They expected him to die quickly, so they had not bothered with long-term supplies. Temin found what looked like a good spot between 2 large rocks that would protect him from the wind. He started setting up his tent, but the ground kept trying to dissolve the support stakes. The rocks were not rocks at all, but some kind of sleeping creature that woke up when he touched it. The creature looked like a giant worm covered in stone armor. It had a mouth full of teeth that were each bigger than Temin's entire body. It was very unhappy about being woken up. Taemin ran. The high gravity made running almost impossible, but fear gave him strength. He stumbled through the sharp grass, dodging tentacle branches that tried to grab him. The worm creature followed him, making sounds like an earthquake. He found a cave in the side of a hill and dove inside. The worm was too big to follow him, but it waited outside, making angry rumbling noise. Taemin caught his breath and looked around his new shelter. The cave was deep and dark, but his suit had lights that showed him. The walls were covered in some kind of slime that glowed faintly green. When he touched it with a tool, it hissed and tried to eat the metal. This was going to be harder than he thought. Day 2 was worse. The cave turned out to be connected to an underground river of acid that ate through his water recycling equipment. His emergency food was running low because the high gravity made him burn calories faster than normal. The air scrubbers in his suit were working overtime to keep the toxic atmosphere from killing him. But Taemin had learned something important. The planet was not just randomly dangerous. It was systematically dangerous. Everything was designed to kill intruders, but it was also designed to support the local ecosystem. The acid that destroyed his equipment was also breaking down dead organic matter and creating incredibly rich soil. The carnivorous plants were competing with each other, which meant they had to be very efficient at extracting nutrients from their environment. This was not a dead world. This was a very much alive world that had evolved to be hostile on. Day 3, his food ran out. Taemin stared at his empty ration packages and made a decision. He was going to have to eat something from this planet, or he was going to die. The question was whether the local food would kill him quickly or slowly. He started with the slime on the cave walls. His suit analyzed it and found proteins, vitamins, and minerals, along with several compounds that would probably poison him. The key word was probably. He cooked a small sample over a heat source from his emergency kitten, ate it while monitoring his vital signs. It tasted like chicken mixed with battery acid, but it did not kill him immediately. His stomach hurt for several hours, but he did not die. Day 4, he tried some of the red grass after cooking it thoroughly and filtering out the obviously toxic parts. It was actually not terrible. It had a metallic taste, but it contained carbohydrates his body could use. Day 5, he discovered that some of the smaller tentacle creatures were edible if you cooked them long enough to break down their natural toxins. By day 6, he was not just surviving, he was learning the planet had rules. If you understood the rules, you could work with them instead of against them. The acid rain that fell every few hours was predictable. You could tell when it was coming by watching the behavior of the flying creatures that looked like bats, made of metal. The carnivorous plants attacked anything that moved, but they ignored things that smelled like other local creatures. Taemin started rubbing mud and plant juices on his suit to mask his human scent. The underground river of acid was dangerous, but it was also a highway. The current was strong enough to carry him quickly through the cave system if he could find a way to protect himself from the acid. On day 7, his emergency beacon activated, automatically sending a signal to the Galactic Council that he was still alive. Taemin looked at the blinking device for a long moment, then turned it off. The aliens expected him to die. They expected him to give up and call for rescue. They expected him to prove that humans were weak and needed alien guidance. Taemin had other plans. By the end of his first week on Keth 7, he had moved his camp 3 times, found 6 different sources of edible food, and mapped the local predator territories. He had learned to predict the acid rain by watching the behavior of the metal bats. He had figured out which plants were safe to touch and which ones would try to eat him. More importantly, he had realized something that the previous alien colonists had missed. This planet was not trying to kill him personally. It was trying to kill everything that did not belong. The defense system was biological rather than technological. The entire ecosystem was designed to eliminate invasive species, but humans were very good at adapting to hostile environments. They had been doing it for millions of years. Taemin looked up at the blood-red sky and smiled. The real work was just beginning. The alien council members monitoring his life signs were confused. Not only was the human still alive, his stress levels were dropping. His heart rate was normalizing. His brain activity suggested he was problem-solving rather than panicking. Ambassador Hyjin of the Shark People sent a message to the council leader asking if they should send a rescue team to verify Taemin's status. The reply was firm. The agreement was 6 months. They would honor it. Besides, what harm could one human do to an entire planet. If they could have seen Taman at that moment carefully collecting samples of local bacteria and studying the underground fungal networks that connected the entire continent, they might have asked a different question. The question was not what harm could one human do to the planet. The question was, what could the planet do for one very determined human? By month 4, Taman had stopped being a survivor and become a settler. The difference was enormous. His original cave shelter had grown into a complex of connected underground chambers carved out by controlled acid erosion. He had learned to direct the underground acid rivers to dissolve rock in specific patterns, creating rooms and tunnels exactly where he needed them. The main living area was large enough for 20 people and included a workshop, laboratory, kitchen, and storage areas. The walls were lined with a bioconcrete he had developed using cave slime. Local minerals and processed organic matter from his compost system's power came from geothermal taps he had drilled into the planet's volcanic activity using tools forged from local metals. The planet had abundant rare earth elements, and the acid rivers had already done most of the refining work for him. His surface compound was protected by 3 rings of defense. The inner ring was his domesticated carnivorous plants that had learned to recognize him by scent and would attack anything else that approached. The middle ring was a pack of 6-legged Volf creatures he had befriended by consistently providing them with food and medical care. The outer ring was an early warning system of metal bats and other flying creatures that reported unusual activity, but his real achievement was not the base itself. It was what he had done to the planet, the underground fungal network that connected every plant on the continent had become his communication and control system. By introducing carefully designed earth bacteria into the network, he had created a biological internet that carried his chemical signals across thousands of kilometers when he needed to know about weather patterns. The network told him when dangerous predators were moving through his territory. The network warned him when he wanted to establish a new outpost. The network helped him find the best locations. Most importantly, he had figured out the planet's greatest secret. Kith 7 was not naturally a death world deep beneath the surface in chambers older than human civilization. He had found the ruins of an ancient alien city. The architecture was completely different from anything the current galactic species used. It was grown rather than built, with walls and structures that looked like they had been shaped by living organisms. The technology was still partially functional after months of careful study and experimentation. Taman had realized that the planet's hostile ecosystem was actually an automated defense system. The ancient civilization that had lived here had faced some kind of invasion or catastrophe. They had turned their entire world into a weapon designed to kill anything that tried to colonize it. The system had been running for millions of years, faithfully destroying every attempt at settlement, but it was not programmed to handle someone who worked with it instead of against it. Taman had spent weeks learning the ancient programming language, which was based on chemical signals rather than electronic data. By introducing the right compounds into the fungal network, he could communicate with the planetary defense system. He could not turn it off completely. The system was too vast and too deeply integrated into the planet's biology, but he could convince it that he was not an invader. He was a gardener. The changes were dramatic and immediate. Acid storms stopped occurring in his territory entirely. The rain that fell was clean water with just enough dissolved minerals to feed his crops. Carnivorous plants became protective barriers that channeled dangerous animals away from his settlements. The underground acid rivers became fresh water streams that powered his mills and workshops. Predatory animals either avoided his territory completely or became part of his extended community. The Volf pack had grown to include several other species that had learned to cooperate with human presence. Rockworms brought him rare metals and gems from deep underground in exchange for food and protection. Most remarkably, the planet started actively helping his expansion efforts. When he needed to establish a new outpost, the fungal network would guide him to the perfect location. Plants would clear landing areas for his aircraft. Ground would be pre-softened for construction. Underground water sources would be redirected to provide fresh water. Within 2 months of cracking the ancient programming, Taman had established 7 major settlements connected by a transportation network of underground tunnels and surface roads. The roads themselves were living constructs maintained by the planet's biological systems. His agricultural production was extraordinary. The hybrid plants he had developed were now growing wild across 3 continents, producing more food than thousands of people could eat. The planet's own defense system was protecting his crops from pests and diseases, while the fungal network distributed nutrients exactly where they were needed. Mining operations were equally impressive. The planet delivered processed metals and rare elements directly to his workshops through the underground transport systems. He had access to materials that would cost millions of credits on galactic markets, but perhaps most impressive was his biological research. The planet's ecosystem contained pharmaceutical compounds that could revolutionize galactic medicine. He had identified treatments for diseases that affected dozens of different alien species. The carnivorous tree spores alone could produce antibiotics that would save millions of lives. His laboratory was producing compounds that could extend lifespan, improve mental function, and enhance physical capabilities. The planet that had been designed to kill everything was now producing medicines to heal everything. The alien monitoring stations were going crazy. Satellite scans showed massive terraforming activity across multiple continents. Vegetation patterns had changed completely. New water sources had appeared. Mountain ranges had been carved into geometric patterns that suggested large-scale engineering projects. Most disturbing of all, the planet's energy signatures had changed. The deep volcanic systems that had been chaotic and violent for millions of years were now operating in regular, predictable patterns. Ambassador Hyjin demanded an emergency council session. "This is impossible," she insisted. To the assembled delegates, "Our best scientists studied KEF-7 for decades before declaring it unsurvivable. One human cannot have accomplished planetary-scale terraforming in 4 months." The council leader was staring at the latest reports with growing dread. The data showed not just survival, but expansion. Not just adaptation, but domination. The human had not conquered the death world. He had convinced it to become a garden world. The shark ambassador showed her teeth in what was definitely not a smile. "Perhaps we should reconsider the terms of our agreement," but it was too late for that. Deep space monitoring stations had detected human ships approaching the galactic border. Multiple vessels moving in formation with the kind of coordination that suggested military organization. The humans had received Taemin's progress reports. The first colony fleet was already on its way. The council leader looked around the chamber at delegates who were no longer laughing about human weakness. They were calculating how quickly they could change sides in what was clearly going to be a very different kind of galactic politics. On KEF-7, Taemin was receiving messages from Earth. The first transmission was from his sister, who was leading the advanced colonial expedition. The second was from the Human Colonial Authority, requesting detailed reports on terraforming techniques. The third was from Earth Command, asking for strategic assessments of galactic defensive capabilities. But the message that made him smile was from his grandmother. "I told you the land always knows how to take care of itself," she had written. "You just have to listen." Taemin looked out over his thriving settlements and the gardens that stretched to the horizon. He listened to the chemical songs of the fungal network and the satisfied rumbling of the rockworms who were building him a new spaceport. The planet was singing, and soon the galaxy would hear the song. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was very different from the meeting. 6 months earlier, Taemin sat at the main council table as an equal, representing not just humanity but the newly recognized sovereign world of KEF-7. The planet had officially petitioned for independence and been granted full galactic citizenship along with voting rights in the council. The chamber itself had been modified to accommodate human physiology. The atmosphere now included the proper oxygen-nitrogen mixture. Human-compatible food and water were available at all stations. Translation systems had been updated to handle human languages and cultural concepts. Most importantly, the seating arrangement had changed. Where humans had once stood alone at the defendants' table, they now occupied 3 permanent seats on the primary council ring, the same seats that had been held by the most powerful species in the galaxy for thousands of years. The change had not been voluntary. The council leader still wore its crystal spikes, but they were dim and gray rather than the bright, aggressive colors of 6 months earlier. The creature that had once towered over Taemin now seemed smaller. Somehow diminished by the magnitude of its mistake. The terms of our agreement were very clear, Taman said calmly. His voice carried easily through the vast chamber thanks to the new human-designed acoustic systems that had been installed. Humanity was given 6 months to establish a successful colony on Keth 7. We succeeded, therefore we have earned unrestricted expansion rights and full council. Membership. Ambassador Hyjin tried one last desperate argument. But surely the intent of the agreement was to test human survival capabilities, not to grant unlimited territorial expansion. One human on one world cannot justify giving your entire species carte blanche to colonize wherever you choose. Taman smiled and activated the holographic display system, the chamber filled with images from 49 different worlds that were in various stages of human colonization. Actually, he said the agreement specified that if one human could establish a successful colony, then humanity would receive full membership rights. There was no limitation on what constituted success. The images showed thriving cities growing food in hostile environments and alien species working alongside human settlers. The transformation was remarkable. Worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable were now producing enough food and materials to support millions of inhabitants. We currently have active settlements on 49 worlds across 16 star systems, he continued. Each settlement is completely self-sufficient and most are producing surplus resources for trade. Every single world was considered impossible to colonize by current galactic standards. The Shark ambassador showed her teeth, but it was not a threatening gesture anymore. It was more like the expression of a predator that had suddenly realized it was being hunted. You cannot possibly defend such a vast territory. Taman touched his communication device and the chamber, filled with tactical displays showing the defensive capabilities of human space. Our defense networks are quite robust. He said each world is protected by biological weapon systems that can eliminate specific threats while leaving friendly species unharmed. We have communication networks that operate faster than traditional hyperspace routes. We have manufacturing capabilities that can produce weapons and ships using local materials. The displays showed automated shipyards around gas giants manufacturing vessels that use completely unknown technology, biological weapons platforms that could target specific genetic markers, planetary shield systems that drew power directly from stellar radiation. More importantly, he continued, we have something that no other species in this galaxy possesses. He paused for dramatic effect. We have the ability to turn death worlds into garden worlds. Every planet that every other species has written off as impossible, we can make habitable. We can take the most hostile environments in the galaxy and transform them into productive colonies within months. The implications were staggering. There were thousands of planets throughout galactic space that had been surveyed and rejected as uninhabitable. Worlds with toxic atmospheres, crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, or hostile ecosystems that made colonization impossible. Using traditional methods, humans could live on all of them. The economic implications alone were enough to reshape galactic civilization. Human colonies could produce exotic materials, rare elements, and biological compounds that were impossible to obtain anywhere else. They could support populations in star systems that had been written off as worthless, but the military implications were even more significant. Human settlements could be established in locations that other species could not reach or defend. They could create supply bases and staging areas in systems that were supposedly empty. They could build defensive networks in places where no one else would think to look. We are prepared to share these capabilities, Taman said, but only as partners, not as subjects. The vote on human membership was held immediately. It was unanimous. Every single species representative voted to grant humanity full galactic citizenship, unrestricted expansion rights, and 3 permanent seats on the Galactic Council. The alternative was unthinkable. Humanity now controlled the keys to unlimited expansion in a galaxy where habitable planets had always been the limiting factor. They had weapons that could destroy fleets without being detected. They had defensive capabilities that made their territory essentially invulnerable. More importantly, they had proven that cooperation was more effective than conquest. The new human colonies were accepting alien immigrants who wanted to learn terraforming techniques. Species that had been locked into declining territories for centuries were suddenly being offered fresh worlds and new opportunities. The rigid hierarchy that had dominated galactic politics for millennia was dissolving into something more flexible and dynamic. As the session ended, Taemin was approached by dozens of alien ambassadors, all wanting to discuss trade agreements, research partnerships, and mutual defense treaties. The species that had once dismissed humans as weak and primitive were now desperate to become allies. Ambassador Hyjin was among the last to approach him. "I underestimated your species," she said simply. "We all did." Taemin nodded. "Everyone makes mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." She studied his face, trying to understand how one person had accomplished so much. "Are you planning to conquer the galaxy?" Taemin laughed. "The galaxy is big enough for everyone. We just want to make sure there is room for humanity to grow." As he walked out of the council chamber, Taemin received a priority message from Keth 7. The planet's population had grown to 50,000 humans and 20,000 alien immigrants, representing 37 different species. The terraforming project was ahead of schedule, and they had established contact with ancient, automated systems on 6 other worlds. But the most important news was about the planet itself. The ancient defense network had revealed its original name. The world had once been called something that translated roughly as hope in the old language. Its inhabitants had built the defensive systems not to destroy invaders, but to preserve their world until someone worthy could restore it. The planet had been waiting for gardeners. Month 6 arrived with the thunder of alien warships dropping out of hyperspace above Keth 7. 12 species had sent their finest vessels to witness the human failure and collect whatever remained of Taemin for proper burial. According to galactic law, the fleet included the council leader's personal flagship, a crystal palace that could house 10,000 beings and had weapons capable of destroying small moons. Ambassador Hyjin stood on the bridge of her command ship, watching the planetary scans with growing disbelief. This was not the same world they had left the human on 6 months ago, where there had been chaotic storms and volcanic activity. The sensors now showed regular weather patterns and controlled geothermal systems. Where there had been random vegetation, there were now geometric patterns of cultivation that stretched across entire continents. Where there had been a lifeless rock, there was now a garden world that rivaled the most advanced terraforming projects in galactic history. The impossible readings get worse, she told her crew. Agricultural output sufficient for millions of inhabitants. Industrial capacity comparable to a major manufacturing world. Spaceport facilities designed for heavy cargo vessels. Energy generation at levels that suggest fusion or antimatter technology. Her tactical officer, a creature with compound eyes that could see in 17 different spectrums, reported something even more disturbing. "Ma'am, we are detecting defensive systems, multiple satellite networks, automated weapon platforms, and what appears to be a planetary shield generator." The council leader materialized on her bridge via hologram, its crystal spikes flashing angry orange. "This is unacceptable. Run deeper scans. I want to know exactly what that human has been doing." The deeper scans made everything worse. The planetary surface showed cities connected by transportation networks that moved faster than anything in galactic civilian-use mining operations, that extracted and processed materials more efficiently than the best corporate facilities, biological research centers that were producing compounds the sensors could not even identify. Most shocking of all, the planet itself seemed to be cooperating with these developments. Volcanic systems were providing perfectly regulated geothermal power. Underground water systems had been rerouted to supply exactly the right amount of fresh water to each settlement. The weather patterns had been altered to provide optimal growing conditions for both native and introduced plant species. This level of terraforming should take centuries. One of the science officers reported it requires massive industrial capacity, environmental engineering on a planetary scale, and cooperation from the existing ecosystem. None of this should be possible. Ambassador Hyjin was studying the tactical displays with the eye of someone who had conquered 17 different worlds. "This is not just terraforming, this is militarization. That human has turned a death world into a fortress." The truth was even more impressive than they realized. Taemin met the inspection fleet at his primary spaceport, a facility that had been carved into the side of a mountain by his domesticated rockworms and defended by both technology and trained alien wildlife. The spaceport was larger than most orbital stations and included facilities for repairing and refueling. Ships of any size he wore clothes made from local materials. That looked simple but were actually more advanced than anything the galactic species produced. The fabric was woven from fibers that could stop projectile weapons, resist energy blasts, and regulate body temperature in any environment. His tools were forged from metals that did not exist in any galactic database. They were stronger than military-grade alloys, but lightweight enough to be carried easily. They contained crystalline components that stored and channeled energy more efficiently than the best galactic technology, but most impressive was his escort. The diplomatic party was met by representatives of 17 different species that had never been seen before. All of them were native to Keth-7. All of them were intelligent. All of them were working in cooperation with human settlement. The Volf pack that had adopted him had evolved rapidly in the planet's accelerated ecosystem. They now used tools, created art, and had developed a spoken language the metal bats had formed. Aerial reconnaissance units that patrolled the planet's airspace. The rockworms had become master engineers who could reshape landscape with precision and artistry. Welcome to Keth-7, Taemin said cheerfully. I hope you brought trade goods. We have quite a lot to offer. The inspection team was given a tour that left them speechless. They visited agricultural centers where hybrid plants produced more food per square meter than the best hydroponic systems in the galaxy. They saw manufacturing facilities where raw materials were processed by biological systems that worked faster and more efficiently than any mechanical technology. They toured research laboratories where scientists, both human and alien, were developing medicines that could cure diseases affecting dozens of different species. They visited cultural centers where art and music from 100 different worlds were being preserved and expanded, but the most shocking discovery was in the deep underground chambers where Taemin had found the ancient ruins. The planetary defense system that had killed every previous colonist was still active and still fully functional. Taemin had not destroyed it or disabled it. He had convinced it to accept him as its rightful operator. The system was now under human control. That means, the council leader said slowly, that this human has access to weapons that destroyed 12 different colonization attempts. Taemin nodded cheerfully. The planetary defense grid is quite impressive. It includes automated weapon systems that can engage targets anywhere in the system, biological warfare capabilities that can eliminate specific species while leaving others unharmed, and environmental control systems that can alter weather patterns, atmospheric composition, and geological activity. He paused to let that sink in before continuing, but we prefer to use it for more constructive purposes. The same systems that were designed to kill invaders are now being used to support sustainable development. Ambassador Hyjin was staring at him with a mixture of fear and respect. You are saying you have turned this entire world into a weapon? Taemin shook his head. I have turned this world into a home. The fact that it can defend itself is just a bonus. The tour continued to his communications center, where he showed them something that made their blood run cold. The underground fungal network that connected every plant on the planet had been expanded and enhanced. It now included fungal colonies on 47 other worlds spread across 12 different star systems. The network could carry information and even small objects instantly across interstellar distances. We have been very busy, he explained. My success report reached Earth 3 weeks ago, along with complete terraforming protocols and samples of our most useful biological innovations. The first colony fleet arrived yesterday. The second fleet launches next month. The holographic displays showed human ships throughout the star system, not just civilian transports, but heavy industrial vessels, mobile shipyards, and what were clearly military escorts. By year's end, Taemin continued, we expect to have 17 new settlements across 8 star systems. All of them will be connected through the fungal network. All of them will be defended by the same biological systems that protect this world. The council leader made a sound like breaking crystal. You cannot possibly defend territory that large with biological weapons. Taemin smiled and activated his personal communicator. The response came from 47 different worlds, simultaneously human colonies, reporting all defensive systems online and fully operational, so ready to receive new colonists or Repel any hostile action at your command. The alien delegates stood in stunned silence as they realized what had happened. The humans had not just survived on one death world. They had learned to create garden worlds from death worlds they had developed. Weapons that could destroy fleets. They had built a communication network that spanned the galaxy. Most importantly, they had done it all in 6 months. This is how humans expand. Taman explained to the silent chamber. We do not conquer death worlds. We make them into garden worlds. We do not eliminate other species. We find ways to help them thrive alongside us. Your mistake was thinking that survival was our limit. He gestured toward the thriving settlements visible through the transparent walls of the facility. Survival was just our starting point.